It's Culture Week on Mission Island, just outside of Fort Resolution. In log cabins on the edge of Denendeh, Indigenous folks from all over are connecting with our traditional practices. You can smoke fish, make dry meat, or cook bannock, a pan-fried bread that's a staple on every dinner table up here. Kids paddle in the water, elders swap stories, and everybody eats.
How long are you down here for?
As soon as I tell people I'm here to talk about Cosmos 954, the stories start flying.
I remember those guys in white suits.
Yeah?
Right behind our house.
Yeah?
Yeah, we lived on the main street, I remember. I was just a kid. Maybe 9 years old or something.
Really?
In the evening, I remember that, looking out the window and there were people walking around. I was wondering what that,
Yeah, no one said anything. Huh?
No.
Sometimes, I wasn't even aware that I'd sparked a conversation until I heard it later in the tape.
Yeah, it was in wintertime, because we were in school. Yeah, it was all over. It was all over, like, and it went this way.
And then those guys in
All those suits, yeah.
bunch of kids following them around town.
I know, and here, like, they were in the suits, and everybody else was, if it was that bad, why didn't they put everybody in suits?
Exactly, or chase the kids away.
Yeah.
But there's a word I keep hearing. It's like a black cloud casting a shadow on the summer day.
Both my grandparents died of cancer.
Yeah, but look at how many people died of cancer. How many people were affected by cancer in this community.
There's been a lot of passionate cancer patients since then. Our dad passed away.
In one of the cabins, I notice a woman sitting behind the booth off to the side. Her name's Ozelle Borden. She's of mixed ancestry, Black and Mi'kmaq, and originally from Halifax, but she's been living in the north for 48 years. She worked as a nurse in Hay River, a town nearby.
I found Hay River very family. Everybody sort of looked after each other.
Working with a small team at a northern hospital isn't much of an issue for Ozelle, because it keeps her nimble.
You get a lot more opportunity to do things that you probably would never see or do back home.
Ozelle remembers the crash of Cosmos 2, and her story goes pretty much the same way. People in white suits, absolutely silent.
Nobody was saying, well, don't go to that area because there could be debris. We never heard that. Why are they protected and their communities aren't?
But the story of Operation Morning Light goes way beyond what happened in 1978. It's been almost half a century since the strangers left this place.
We never ever did hear about the after effects. That's sort of out there in La La Land somewhere, but you never really know what really did happen. But then you just go on with your daily life, no one's telling you anything, so what do? You just suck it up and move on.
But in the hospital, Ozelle sees something disturbing. That word again.
And we did notice an increase with cancer. And it was odd that the cases were on Riverview Road that runs close to the river, but they all had gardens as well. And so you sort of wonder if that came with rain or in the ground, soaked up or whatever. But there was definitely an increase in cancer. It was just odd that they all had vegetable gardens.
Yeah.
They all was diagnosed with cancer. That was all within a year or two after the fallout. In my eyes view, I can see the houses where there's all cancer. And you go right down the street.
As I step outside, the fresh air of the lake fills my lungs. But I'm thinking about that quiet row of houses with their vegetable gardens. Inside each one, a tragedy's unfolding. Loved ones are being lost. No one's listening. Up until now, my journey to piece together the story of Cosmos 954 had been scary sometimes. and sad. But most of the time, it was fascinating to follow my curiosity through the archives and out into the communities. Even the horror could be kind of cartoonish in moments. 3-eared rabbits hopping around the bush and glowing in the dark. But as I got deeper, I started to see something rotten at the root of the story. Cancer. Everywhere I went, that word followed me. Almost no one I met was untouched by the epidemic that's been raging in our communities. And a lot of people connected it to the fall of Cosmos, that winter in '78. I wanted to know if there really was a connection and if anything could be done about it. So it was time to hit the waters of the Big Lake and travel to the place where the story first began, Snowdrift. I'm Dëneze Nakehk'o. From Imperative Entertainment in Vespucci, this is Operation Morning Light. Episode 6, Loved Ones.
If you had the chance to be brought back to life hundreds of years in the future, would you take it? Lawrence Pilgrim, a lifelong scientist, planned for death his entire life. Because for him, death wasn't the end. It was just the beginning.
Lawrence's dream, to be frozen and brought back to life in the future, pulls us into a cryonic soap opera filled with dead pets, grenades, family feuds, Hall of Fame baseball legends, and frozen heads. Lots of frozen heads.
I'm Ash.
And I'm Elena. We host a show called Morbid. Normally, we focus on what happens in the lead up to death.
But this time, it's about what happens next.
Follow Frozen Head on Amazon Music or wherever you get your podcasts. You can binge all episodes early and ad-free by subscribing to Wondery Plus in Apple Podcasts or the Wondery app.
Influencer. It's a word that gets tossed around a lot these days. There is a woman who went the distance, who broke ground as the first true influencer by living a remarkable life. Her name, Elizabeth Taylor. I'm Katy Perry. This is the story of the original influencer. This is Elizabeth the First. Elizabeth the First, the podcast, wherever you listen.
When you tell someone from around here that you plan to travel on Denendeh at 9 o'clock in the morning, they'll laugh in your face. You don't get to decide when you go. The lake does. Hlutzal Cay, the small community that used to be known as Snowdrift, can't be reached except by water or by air. From Fort Rez, the journey on the water is about 150 miles. It begins with a huge open stretch, then narrows into smaller channels between islands. If you're going at a good clip, you can get there in an afternoon. But that's only if the lake lets you. When I ask around Fort Rez about who should take me to Hlutzal Cay, everyone says the same thing. Sam Reimer. He's a 27-year-old Métis hunter, fisherman, and general expert of the lake. The youngest son of 10 siblings, Sam grew up on an island in the Slave River. Just him and his family.
My parents trusted me at the age of 12 to go in the bush at a week at a time. They didn't bug them or anything. Because my dad knew he trained me good. I don't think there's anyone better at hunting than us.
While Sam fuels up the boat, I sit down with his dad, a 75-year-old named Gabby Lafferty. When he was just 16, Gabby worked a season in a gold mine and came away with $20. He put it on a card game and won $500, which he used to buy a canoe.
All I did is hunt, like in the summer, go choke rabbits, you know. That's all we had to live on. There's no such thing as government, giving out stuff before, like welfare and stuff. So you had to make a living out of the bush. That's all we did.
From that first canoe, Gabby built a fleet of 21 boats. He's seen just about everything on that lake.
I traveled through 12-foot waves before, so I got the Bravery Award from Commissioner and RCMP We're saving a guy in 12-foot waves here. Yeah.
I can't even imagine. I get scared at 3, 4 foot.
Like every other elder in Fort Res, he's seen some changes in what comes out of the water.
I mean, I was born and raised with Marai. I like eating it. But now they got green liver. Really bad. And whitefish, they got lumps on them, on the guts. Little bugs on it, but they're not moving or anything. And they're pussy, some of them, not all of them.
Sam says time to go. His heavy gauge Kingfisher boat is ready. At the launch, we take out some tobacco and let it fall gently on the surface of the lake. It's an offering to ask for safe passage, but also to receive teachings and gain a greater appreciation of the land, the water, and ourselves. Then, Sam hits the gas. When you're on an open stretch of Denendeh, you're in the most beautiful place in the world. The surface has the sheen of glass way out to a silver horizon, and when the sun breaks through the sprawling clouds, it throws gold coins on the water. I see flocks of geese just starting their migrations. I see a duck paddling angrily across the water, too fat with fish to fly. After a couple hours, we're at the mouth of the Simpson Islands, countless shreds of land that signal you've arrived in the eastern arm of the lake. I've already noticed how the air around us is smudged with the smoke of forest fires. But in the islands, the air gets trapped, and now it's a thick blue haze. The lake has been mercifully calm, but the visibility is so bad that we can't go any further. Sam pulls up to one of the islands and we make camp for the night. Around the campfire, Sam tells hunting stories. Listening to this guy talk is like a masterclass in hunting moose and harvesting their meat.
Cut off the hide on one side. After you get the hide off, you quarter it with the 2 quarters. You take the arm off, the back leg. And I usually cut the brisket off and then cut the ribs off, then I flip it. After I flip it, do all the same on the other side.
It starts to rain. Lightning shudders in the sky, lighting up the black water of the lake, and thunder rumbles in reply. We huddle in the tent and listen to whatever MP3s we have saved on our phones. That's when we start talking about another beast who lives in these parts. Old Slavey. It's a rare creature, sort of like Denendeh's Loch Ness monster. I thought maybe I saw the tail one time when I was out on the lake with my dad. It looked like a slick black rock, but there wasn't supposed to be a rock out there. By the time we got close, it was gone. But Sam, he's seen the whole thing.
It has 3 horns coming out from its head. Teeth bigger than anything you ever seen. Longer than any boat that's ever made. Looks exactly like a dragon, man. Like, Old Slavey is a water dragon. That's what I think.
We don't run out of stories, but we do run out of energy to tell them. It's been a long day. We fall asleep to the patter of raindrops on the tarp and the waters of Denendeh hugging our little island home. Early the next morning, Sam's already up fishing. Last night was a lightning show, but now the lake is calm. The storm swept the smoke from the forest fires away. If we hit the water now, we'll make it to Hlutzokay in a couple hours. Sam weaves through the islands. On the moss-covered slopes, you can sometimes spot the black shape of a muskox.
He's minding his own business.
That's an enormous animal from the same family as buffalo. The name that the Cree gave muskox translates to ugly bison.
I think all their long hair helps them with mosquitoes. Because they're way up in the tundra. Tundra is like In the summertime, bugs are nuts.
And with their thick, shaggy hair and long, curved horns, you can kind of understand why.
Our wind's blowing his way. He's checking us out.
100 years ago, fur traders had hunted muskox to the brink of extinction. The Canadian government estimated that only a couple hundred remain on the entire North American continent. That's one reason they created the Thelon Game Sanctuary, the vast reserve where the young Americans were staying when they found the famous antlers of Cosmos 954. In the protection of the Thelon, the muskox population thrived. But lately, they've started wandering south from their traditional territory. People around the east arm of Dëneze started seeing them in the early 2000s. Now, they're everywhere. Only 24 hours late, we pull into Huitzilopochtli. It's still the quiet fishing settlement of 1978 with just a couple more power lines. Small houses run down a slope to the lake with clapboard teepees in the backyards for smoking fish. Ravens call to each other from the telephone poles, and the loudest thing, people driving around town on their four-wheelers. I meet up with Stephanie Poole. She's got long black and white hair, and even though she's got a cool, casual vibe, she has this passionate devotion to the people and their way of life.
We're definitely at our happiest when we're not in town here.
Yeah.
So even out at Duhamel Lake or out in the boat or out at our cabin, when we're at the gathering, when we're in the Barren Lands, when we're up at Artillery Lake and Timber Bay, like these are our happy places. You know, we always want to get out on the land. That's what we love.
The streets aren't paved in Huitzilopochtli, and a truck with the big silver tanker is roaming around, watering the streets so the dirt stays packed together. As Stephanie and I leave tracks on the wet streets, I stop to chat with people. Everyone of a certain age remembers Operation Morning Light.
The choppers, army choppers, were all over the place.
Really?
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
The army came in huge force with planes and hazmat suits, and people were all scared and staying in their houses.
The radiation, strong stuff, can cause cancer, all that. Yeah, so maybe that's why there's lots of cancers now, you know, in NWT. It's lots. Yeah, so could be that.
And lots of people are getting sick, we don't know. Maybe it's from that one or from the satellite or the food we eat, drink it, because we live off the land here, right?
As we walk the streets of Huitzilopochtli, a massive flock of geese suddenly appears over the treetops. Stephanie stops and calls out to them.
Influencer. It's a word that gets tossed around a lot these days. But what exactly is an influencer? Well, there is a woman who went the distance, who went beyond the dazzle, who broke ground as the first true influencer by living a remarkable life. She had power, real power, and longevity, influencing generations. Her name, Elizabeth Taylor.
I know she was loud. I know she was hysterically funny. I know she swore. But Elizabeth said how painfully shy she was.
She went on perfume tours, and the places were mobbed just to see her.
She was starting to try and take control of her life, but then tragedy and life kind of got in the way.
I'm Katy Perry, and Elizabeth Taylor has fascinated, inspired, and influenced me as an artist, woman, and an advocate. This is the story of the original influencer. This is Elizabeth I.
I head down the slope to visit Celine Marlowe. We met Celine at the very beginning of our story. She was that young language teacher back in 1978. And when the white suits arrived, her husband George came to the school and told her to let the kids out, and they all watch the silent strangers stalk through the community.
Oh, Celine.
I find Celine on her porch by the lake, smoking a cigarette and drinking ginger ale. Seagulls swirl in the sky and four-wheelers rip through the streets. She's got short, curly, salt and pepper hair and eyes that grin behind black-rimmed glasses. She just come back from her cabin, where she spends almost all her time.
I think I'm the only one in town here that's a woman that will live on the land by herself. From springtime, I just stay up there, go trapping for muskrats. Not only muskrats, rabbit, chickens. Even today, I had rabbit for lunch.
Celine is like an encyclopedia of land-based knowledge. Her husband George was a master hunter, and she soaked up everything he knew.
I teach my grandsons how to handle a gun, how to shoot, when to, how to load your gun, how to keep your gun safety, never point it this way or that way. Teach them how to be on the land, how to set traps for muskrat, how to set a trap for marten, stuff like that. What George taught me, I'm teaching it to my grandsons.
As far as I'm concerned, Celine is basically the Michelangelo of tanning hides. People call her the Hide Slayer, because with a single glance, she can tell you exactly what work needs to be done to transform a hide into a beautiful piece of clothing. Back when she was just a 12-year-old girl, she was determined to learn about this complicated process. Then, she has a stroke of luck.
I found one hide by somebody's garbage. I took it home. I didn't tell my dad.
Problem is, her mom's in the hospital, and she's too shy to ask anyone to show her how to do it. So, she stashes the discarded caribou hide under her bed, still covered in meat and hair. Then she sneaks over to an elder's house.
That old granny, she was working on hide, and I see how she was doing it. She put it down, and then she put water in there, and then she folded, and I told her why you were doing that. She said it's to make the hide soft. That way it'd be easy to take the hair off. So I said, okay. So I went home. That hide I found, I put the hide there, put water on it. The way I saw her do it, she folded, then she covered it. So I did that, and I put it under the bed.
To scrape the sides of the hide, she's going to need a stick and a bone. So she goes to one of her aunts and says another aunt needs to borrow a stick. Then she goes to the second aunt and says the first one needs the bone.
All the lies I'm saying, I think sometimes when I think about it, it's like, my goodness sake. I was telling a lie to all my aunties all the time.
But one day she hits a snag, something she can't just borrow. Caribou brains.
I sat and looked at her how she was making that brain paste. She boiled the brain, and then she took all the little membranes off it, and then she put soap in there, sunlight soap in there, and she put some lard in there. Now she's mixing it. She was mixing it to make it soft using her hand, and then she dipped her hide in there, and then she put it outside and to freeze it.
The brain paste helps soften the hide. It's a crucial part of the process. But for Celine?
I don't know where to find caribou brain. And then I was walking around down this road, somebody's house there. I saw a caribou head outside. So I took that head and I took it home. I broke it open and I took the brains out. I did the same thing what I saw that old granny doing.
Finally, the hide is finished and she hangs it outside. Doesn't look like much, but it's hers.
I'm just proud of it, even though it was so holy. That's how I started working on caribou hides. And I just taught my own self how to do it. Mm-hmm. But when I think about it now, it's like, good grief, I learned all that by myself.
At 17, Celine falls in love with George Marlowe. At first, they have to sneak around meeting in secret. And then they get married.
He worked all the time. He worked as a grader, a loader, water truck, everything.
From then on, they're inseparable, hunting and trapping and following the traditional ways. Under George's guidance, Celine learns all the lessons of the land.
The most important thing when you're on the land is you got to know how to handle a gun, just in case there's a bear right there. And twice there was a bear by my cabin, and both times I got it. I had to. And the same with a wolf. I like it or not, I still had to shoot it.
Teaching the Denesuline language at the school here in Tlutsoke, Celine was at the forefront of maintaining our traditional ways of knowing. But she's noticed a decline over the years.
Just lately, they start losing their language, not speaking it. It's so sad, though, to see that. And most of the young people that are here, I taught them when they were in kindergarten. And now they're all adults. They have kids and they have grandchildren. And now they all lost their language.
One day in the fall of '78, Celine and George are hunting near Artillery Lake. That's about 20 miles east of Denendeh. George is out ahead of her when suddenly he stops. It's like he spotted a predator. But it's just a metal object sitting in the bush.
It was a big piece, like that.
Sometimes a small aircraft will drop a piece of debris. But George used to work at an airport, and he can tell the difference.
It's not apart from a plane, he said.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe it's a satellite that fell, he said. That's all he said.
It doesn't have teeth or claws, but George still knows danger when he sees it.
He said, don't go near it, he said. George told me to turn back, so I turned back.
This is the first time I've heard someone say they found a piece of cosmos after the operation was complete. But before I have time to process, I hear that word again.
Maybe that's why there's so many cancer. Because George was right there with them. And there was all the other people that were there with him. They're all gone. All of them are all gone. In those days, nobody knows anything about radiation. Nobody knows what it does to people. So scary. Only now when I think about it, it's like, oh my God, all these people that were here, they all died of cancer.
A few years ago, Celine and George fly to Edmonton. George has been having some health problems, and they want to get tested. That's something that people do a lot here, travel to hospitals in Edmonton. There isn't anything around here that can offer that level of care, but Edmonton is over 600 miles away. We have to plan for a routine checkup the way other people plan for a holiday. Celine's with George when the doctor gives them the results.
The day that they told him he had cancer was on July the 17th in Edmonton. They told him that they can't do nothing, they can't do surgery, nothing. They can't do radiation.
George doesn't want to stay in Edmonton. He doesn't even want to stay in Yellowknife on the west side of the lake. He wants to be with family back in Tlutsoke.
One evening he said, I don't want to go to Yellowknife. All they're going to do is give me morphine. And who's going to pay for all my grandchildren to be with me when I go? I said, okay, if that's what you want, I'll just keep you here. And then I told him, remember, I told him, when we first got married, the priest told us, till death do us part. Well, I'll look after you, I said. Until you're gone, I told him. Well, that's what I did.
As George lies dying, he and his wife spend their last precious moments talking. George once taught her how to shoot a gun and trap a rabbit. Now, he has a final lesson to share.
You love your grandsons, work hard for them. Show them you could do it. So that's why I keep going. Try to be strong as much as I can for them, to show them how to be. To lose a loved one, to be honest, is really, really tough. But you just have to continue on and be strong. I'll never forget what he said, you know. Someday we'll meet again, he said.
It isn't here in Nakehk'o where George and Celine are reunited. It's out on the land where they're really connected.
For me, even though I'm by myself sitting there, I don't feel that I'm alone. I still feel that he's watching me. So I don't feel alone.
Celine's story follows me through the streets. There's a particular beauty to people who find ways to be joyful in the face of so much pain. But tonight, I can't find a way to be joyful. Passing by the homes of Nakehk'o, I think back to the little row of houses that Ozell Borden described, empty now, the loved ones taken away. And what happens to all that pain? Where does it go? That's next time. Operation Morning Light is a production of Imperative Entertainment and Vespucci and is hosted by me, Dëneze Nakehk'o. I wrote it with Michael LaPointe. For Imperative Entertainment, the executive producer is Jason Hoch. For Vespucci, the executive producers are Daniel Turcan, Johnny Galvin, and Michael LaPointe. The series producer is Aliya Pabani. The story editor is Matt Willis. Thomas Curry is the managing producer. Audio mix and sound design by Matt P. Our closing theme is Siga Dante by Digawolf off his album Inni Spirit, and this episode was recorded at his studio, Naka Productions.